I just realized this is like a normal podcast. After a normal win, we don't have to talk about the head coach acting like a lunatic and going on an apology tour. This is just a football podcast today.
Yeah, we don't have is Nick getting fired on our agenda for the first time in a while.
Yeah. It's nice to have a
Wait
normal
till next week to do that.
Yeah, exactly. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast presented by Nissan. He's Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We do have a lot to talk about today, a lot of football to talk about today. We'll mention a little bit about some of the things the Eagles have done well recently and whether or not we think it can continue for the next few weeks, maybe the rest of the season. Today is Tuesday as we're recording this. We just left the NovaCare complex, talked to Vic Fangio, Kellen Moore, and Michael Clay. So some big takeaways from the Eagles coordinators. And then we have a bunch of questions that came in, some during the game. It's funny. You can see like the early questions were a lot of panic and then later on a little chest puffery, which is fun. But let's start today with how well the Eagles ran the football, 269 yards on the ground against the Giants. And I've heard a lot of this question be floated around. Can this be the identity of the team and really of the offense?
If they play the Giants every week, yes. But no, I don't think so because, then you have the Browns load the box and you got to win the game throwing. And it's going to change every week. And look, there were times early on, I guess, late in 21 where they were able to just run it at will against everybody. I'm not sure they're at that point. I still think you got to throw the ball. You got to be balanced. You got to mix it up. You got to be unpredictable. And I certainly think Saquon's talented enough that the running game is going to be a big part of what they do. But you have A.J. Brown. You have Devontae. Dallas will be back at some point soon. You can get 20, 30, 40 yards a pop throwing the ball. And, 4.5 yards a run is nice. But I just don't think – I don't think in this day and age – I mean, look, there's teams, maybe the Ravens are one, although their quarterback threw for 5 touchdowns Monday night. I think there are teams that can run the ball really well, but even they have to pass to win some games, and it's just the nature of the game. You do what you have to do to win. I don't think being one-dimensional or being predictable can be an identity, unless if you have Jim Brown. There's sometimes there's guys who can really, there's running backs that can really carry a team. And there have been teams that are built around that. But in this day and age, in this league, it's a passing league. I think you have to be balanced. And it is a passing league, but there are some teams that are really running the football this year. There are. And, I think it goes in waves and it goes in ups and downs. And certainly running the ball like they did Sunday gives you a lot of things. I mean, it wears down the defense. You control the clock. By the end of the game, you looked at the Giants and they were shot. They were gassed. I think their defense played 35, 36 minutes. When you can do it, it's great, but you just can't always do it. And I look at the Browns game. I mean, Jim Schwartz is a guy that's going to, crowd the box, play single high, and you're going to beat that team. If you're going to beat them, you're going to do it throwing the ball. So, and they did, and it wasn't always pretty, but they averaged 2.5 yards a run. And I like the fact that they stuck with it and they still ran Saquon 18 times because you figure you give him 20 carries, he's going to bust one. It's going to happen. Didn't happen in that game, but most games it will. So I'm all for using Saquon and giving him 22 to 24 touches a game, whatever it takes. But I just don't think that can be a team's identity in this NFL. Okay. You hit on a lot of stuff there. Let me hope you're taking notes. I was mentally. Ultimately, I agree with you. It can't be the only thing they do. They can't just say, hey, we're a run team. You have A.J. Brown, you have Devontae Smith, you have Dallas Goedert. But in these last 2 weeks, we have seen them lean into it more. And even when the results weren't there, like in the Browns game, I thought that was a really good sign. Like even on early downs, running the football, because Saquon has been their best player. And you can say maybe it's Lane or what. He's been one of their best players. He's certainly someone you can lean on. And I think that while it won't become their complete identity, there are going to be games where you have to pass the football. I think it can always be a big part of this offense. And that's the biggest change I see
after the bye week is just like they're committing to doing it. And sometimes that's like half of the battle is just having your offensive play caller be willing to do it. Because you're right about Saquon. He didn't bust one in the Browns game, but it wasn't like in the Giants game he started off with huge chunks.
No, I think he averaged 2.5 yards a carry in the first quarter.
He was bottled up early.
Yeah.
But you had the feeling that like you're watching him run, you're watching how hard he's running. You saw that catch he had when he just leveled the 24 in on the sideline. You're thinking, well, he's running hard enough that eventually this makes sense. And that was partly gameplay and game strategy in that one, because you have such good pass rushers and you have a couple of backups out there. The best way to neutralize them is to go forward and attack with your offensive line, and you do that by running it. So I think like some of it was game script, but I do see a more concerted effort to run the ball, and I think that's good.
Yeah, I don't disagree. And, I think somewhere around 60-40 is fine. There's going to be games where the other day it was 45 runs and 15 pass attempts, I think, because I think Pickett had one. Jalen threw 14 times. But, I think if it's working, I'm all for it. If it's not working, I'm all for sticking with it and keep on pounding it. But also, look, if they're crowding the box, there's going to be one-on-ones out there for some really good receivers. And I like those matchups. And Jalen's throwing the ball pretty well. He's been fine the last couple of weeks with the focus on the running game. I think you can get some good matchups in the passing game.
Mm-hmm. I have a few things here on my list, like positive things that have come out of either the Giants game or the Giants and Browns game. And I want to talk about them in the context of how confident you are that they can continue.
Right. And
the first one is kind of what we were just talking about with the run game. Can they keep running like this?
Maybe not 270 or 269, but and especially when Mulata comes back, it's really encouraging that they did a lot of that damage with two backups on the O-line.
Two backups, by the way, who are better suited to be run blockers.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially Big Fred.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No question about it. And that goes into the equation too. But yeah, I think they can be a really good running team. I do. And it starts with 26. He's better than I expected. And he's probably better than Howie expected. I thought he'd be really good, but he's such a team guy, and he's so unselfish.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah.
It's a little off script, but the Eagles put out the video, and Nick told us it, but to actually see it
was really
play
cool.
out. And if you guys missed this, early in the fourth quarter, Nick sat next to Saquon and told him the situation, hey, you're 13 yards shy of your career high. If you want this, I'm happy to leave you out there. We want you to get this if it's something you want, but I am going to sit a lot of the other starters. That's my plan if they don't score here. And without hesitation, like Nick told us what Saquon said, but to see it on the video showed the zero hesitation. He didn't even think about it. He was like, no, I'm paraphrasing, take me out.
Get me off this turf.
Well, he didn't say that, but he said, let the young guys eat. And it's such a cool moment.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think we overblow those moments. No, I think that's a huge deal.
I do too. And the Eagles tweeted it out. It's easy to find. It's really cool. Really cool moment. Very genuine. Like when Nick told the story, I'm like, oh yeah, maybe that happened. But then you see it exactly as he laid it out.
Like I thought for sure there'd be like how many
yards I got?
I want to get you 13. That's one run.
Yeah, it probably would have been. He could have, if he stayed in the way the Giants defense was playing at the end of that game, he probably could have gone for Shady's record, 217.
In play.
2 runs. Yeah. They had a couple drives left. He's a team guy. He's genuinely happy for Gainwell to see him get out there and get his 56 yards.
Will Shipley ended up getting the first carries of his career.
Yeah, he did.
Didn't go for much because everyone in that situation knows you're running and you're behind the backup offensive line, but it's good to get that experience.
Sure. Yeah. It was a cool moment. And I think it's Saquon. I think one of the reasons his teammates gravitate toward him so much is because of that attitude. He's so unselfish. And like he'll talk about his legacy. He wants to be the greatest ever, and he wants all pros. He wants all that stuff. But ultimately, he's all about winning. And he like you can't get through an interview with him where he won't talk about. Look, really, I don't care if I have 18 yards or 118. I just want to win. He didn't win in New York. I mean, they had one winning season. He had one winning season in 6 years. One playoff appearance. They won a game and they lost here. So I think, I mean, I don't know if he's ever been 4-2, you know? So it's genuine and it's really cool to see.
Yeah. And as far as the player, I mean, he is so explosive. That was one of the big questions. It's like aside from the thought process of paying a running back, part of the reason you think about it is like the wear and tear. Is he still the same athlete? He's been even more explosive than I could have ever guessed. I thought he'd still be really explosive, but I didn't update this after Monday night's games, but entering Monday night, he had 2 of the top 5 fastest times as a ball carrier this year and 3 of the top 20.
Yeah. I mean, he's like I think we talked about it after the game that I just have never seen that combination of speed and power in a running back or in anybody really. Shady came close, but he's faster than Shady.
Yeah. Like you have it with some edge rushers, but like on the offensive side of the football.
Yeah, Reggie White. I mean, Myles Garrett is a few.
Yeah.
But Myles Garrett, did you see Myles Garrett? Really off script. His press conference after that Bengals game.
No.
When he talked about fans like I guess they were cheering when Deshaun Watson got hurt. And he was like, I'm not a Deshaun Watson fan by any means, but he just talked about how wrong it was to, you know, and he had kind of addressed Deshaun Watson's past few years and everything he's been through. And he said, no matter what somebody's done to cheer an injury, you know, it's just wrong. And, you know, we all have to be ashamed of ourselves for that. It was a cool moment. I like him.
Myles Garrett?
Yeah. Yeah, watch. I'm not expressing it well, but it was really good. Anyway, Saquon back on the rails here. Yeah, he's better than I thought. I looked at his numbers from since 2019. I mean, he had a really good year in 22, but I mean he was 4.1 over the last 5 years, 19 to 23, and he had some great moments, but the home runs weren't there. I mean, he's got more 40-yard runs. He also had a 38, but he's got more 40-yard runs in 6 games this year than he had in his last 2 seasons with the Giants, his last 33 games with the Giants. So he's healthy. Yes. He's got better players around him. And any thought of him being over the hill or washed up or on the downside, I mean, he's answered those questions.
Yeah. After the pod or after the game on our post-game pod, I talked about his rush yards over expected, and they've been tremendous, but his yards before contact are way up too, which speaks to 2 things. One, he's got good blockers in front of him. 2, he still has the explosion to hit the hole hard and miss that contact.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Those are revealing numbers because look, he never had an elite O-line up there. He just didn't. It makes a difference.
Yeah. The second thing on my list, can Jalen continue to not turn the football over?
I think he can. I think, and I give him credit for doing work during the bye week, and really, he hasn't said exactly what he worked on, but he kind of hinted that it was about trusting his players, not forcing the ball, trusting everybody, all his receivers, and not forcing it. And that's what he's done. And when you don't force it, that's when he was turning it over, when he was forcing things and trying to get it to AJ when maybe AJ wasn't open or Devontae. So look, his numbers haven't been overwhelming the last couple of weeks, but
I think he's been okay.
He's been fine. And when he doesn't turn it over, what are they now? I sent you the 19-6, I think, when he doesn't turn it over since he became the starter at the end of 20. So you like those odds. That would be 76%, right? 19 out of 25, 76%. I'll take those odds. And I think it's hard because, I think he likes being Superman out there, and we've seen signs of. We talked at some point recently about how he was starting to resemble Carson in 20. But if he plays within himself, And he's done that before for large gaps of his career, large portions of his career. So I think he can.
Yeah, and it's not to say that there won't be games where they need him to put a cape on, right?
Yeah.
Like the Super Bowl was won, right? He just needed to make plays. And there are still moments where he needs to make plays with his legs, like the one where he's bottled up in the pocket, he somehow escapes and runs for a first down.
Yeah.
Those can be his Superman plays.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's still a way to do it. But he's protecting the football right now. It's a little easier when you're only attempting 14 passes. That's not going to be the norm week in and week out. But he is protecting the ball. The turnover worthy plays are zero. He has zero, not just zero turnovers the last 2 weeks, zero turnover worthy plays. He had 11 through 4 weeks, by far the most in the league. He's still up there among the league leaders because of the start he got off to. But I do really think it's encouraging.
Yeah, I do too.
Just the fact that it's clearly part of his thought process now.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I don't think he's still taking shots. He's still not afraid to throw deep, but not forcing it, not throwing the double coverage. I think he's thrown the double coverage since the last 2 games. But if he sees a guy one-on-one with AJ or Devontae, yeah, he's getting the ball.
Okay. Next on the list, the pass rush being this effective. 8 sacks against the Giants, 5 sacks against the Browns.
Second most ever in a 2-game span.
They had 6 through 4 games.
Yeah.
So, they've really turned it around. But 2 of the worst offenses in the league.
Yeah. I don't think that's sustainable, that kind of number. I think they're going to be somewhere in between these 2 weeks and the first 4. But if I am encouraged by the way individual guys are playing, they don't have to get 8 a game, but they need to get 3 or 4 a game and pressure. It's not even totally about the sacks, but just, when they weren't getting sacks, they also weren't pressuring. So I think it's a combination of some guys kind of learning Vic's system and getting more confidence in themselves and understanding their roles. But certainly the Browns and Giants O-lines are a big part of it too.
Yeah, I'm getting a little ahead of ourselves because we're going to talk about what Vic Fangio said a little later, but I think this is important in this context. He mentioned that the pass rush and the coverage in this last game really worked well in unison. And that's apparent. Like you watch this game tape.
Yeah.
There were a few times where Daniel Jones just has nowhere to go with the football. And then the pass rush finally gets home. We always talk about these 2 things being tied. It's fine to get a coverage sack. You don't always have to win off the snap. There can be coverage sacks. You can take away these opportunities and then clean up. And that's kind of what happened on a few of them Sunday. And I think that's good.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You have to be relentless. If you get knocked down, you get back up and keep trying to get after the quarterback. And, it plays into a secondary that's so much improved over last year. It's not even funny.
When you get knocked down, do you get back up again? They're never going to keep you down?
You ever hear who is that? Chumbawamba?
Mm-hmm.
There's a cover version of that song by They Might Be Giants, which is the greatest thing you ever see. It's amazing. I think it was that Tiny Desk Concert series thing.
Okay.
Check out the video. I'm a huge They Might Be Giants fan anyway, but they do a cover that's miraculous.
Okay.
Might be my favorite cover ever.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I'll check that out.
Can we do a whole podcast on cover versions?
Yeah, we'll start it right after we're done recording.
Okay. But yeah, I think they'll be better. I don't think they'll be this good.
Yeah, let's talk about some individual players because I have 3 names here, guys who played very well on Sunday after not playing very well this whole season. Nakobe Dean, Bryce Huff, and Nolan Smith. 3 guys with significant roles on this defense.
Yeah. Where do you want to start? Huff?
Yeah, sure.
I think he's played 2 good games in a row.
Sunday was clearly his best game.
Clearly his best game. I think something's clicking for him. I don't think it's a fluke. I don't know if he's going to, get a sack every game, but he's a guy who's got a body work. He had double-digit sacks last year, so there's something there. And he was pretty down on himself, early. You talked to him after the Tampa game, was it?
One of those games.
Yeah. But I think he's figured it out. I think Vic has kind of figured out how best to use him. And
as a pass rush only guy. Which isn't why they signed him $17 million a year,
right. But you can't put him in situations where he's going to struggle. So maybe at some point when he gets confident as a pass rusher, you can toy around with playing him on other downs. I don't know if there's a reason to, because their other edge rushers are pretty good runs. I mean,
and Nolan Smith falls into that.
Yeah.
For as undersized as he is, he's really good against the run.
And so is BG, and so is Sweaty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all three of those guys are good against the run. Huff is not. But I think he's, I don't see any reason he can't be an 8-sack guy this year, somewhere in that range, if not a little higher. I think he's getting it now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the 4-point stance that we talked about, I know Vic said, well, he thinks it's helping him. Sometimes that's all that matters.
Yeah.
Like, confidence is a big part of this. And if it's a placebo, so be it.
Yeah. And he's confident now, and that can carry him a long way. And if you're not going to play well. Sometimes that's all you need.
How about Nolan? Seems to be turning the corner, had a very good game. Really, the last 2 games, I think he's played very well.
Yeah. He's always played hard. So
Mm-hmm.
a guy that plays hard has a chance, because, when the effort's there, you're going to have a chance to make
At
plays.
least his teammates won't hate him.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know. I want to be encouraged. I might need to see a little bit more, but I like what I've seen.
Is it just because, like, Bryce Huff has the track record, you feel a little more confident in him keeping it up?
Probably, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. He's also, I think he's in a role that really fits him right now. But I think at the very worst in Nolan, you have a guy like, he may never be a high volume sack guy.
He'll be a contributor.
I think he'll be a contributor, just because he's got great effort. I mean, we saw on that sideline play against the Browns. I mean, that's what effort will give you. And it wasn't just effort. It was understanding what the play was and where to go and how to diagnose it and how to defend it. So I'm encouraged, but I still need to see a little bit more. Where are you on him?
I'm very encouraged. Yeah, because we've seen flashes before, and I kind of agree with you. I don't know if he's going to suddenly like have a sack a game, but I think he's a functional player, and you have a role for him no matter what.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if Huff isn't rushing the passer effectively, he's not. There's no reason to have him out there.
Right.
Whereas at least with Nolan, like, the effort's always going to be there, and he'll make effort plays. It's not just like he looks like he's playing hard. Those effort plays manifest, and he like makes them.
Yeah.
So I feel pretty good about there at least being a decent baseline for him.
I go back to that blocked field goal touchdown or the return. He saved a touchdown on that play, and that's an effort. He saw what was going on, and he tackled the returner. And he was the one that messed up. He didn't, messed up the block.
The block punt.
Yeah. The block punt. So yeah, I'm encouraged. I need to see a little more, but I like what I've seen.
And then how about Nakobe?
And that's so huge. If Nolan Smith can just be good, it's huge.
Nakobe.
It was a good game for Nakobe. He's been up and down all year.
I think he's going to continue to be up and down because I think he's good at what he's good at, and he's bad at what he's bad at.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, there are different buckets when you play linebacker, and you got to be in all of them.
Yeah. I mean, they were facing a anemic passing offense, so coverage wasn't really an issue.
But he's fun getting downhill, man.
He is.
He's a nifty little pass rusher.
He is. I just worry about the other dimensions of his game, because against other, like Sunday, I mean, that's not going to be enough.
Get him going forward.
Yeah, but I
agree. Like, there are times he has to be in coverage.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Burrow is going to get rid of the ball a lot faster than Daniel Jones, and it'll go somewhere toward a receiver when he does throw it. So he's going to have to, he'll be in coverage. He's going to have to tackle. Those are things he hasn't been great at.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about the rookie corners? Both Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. Quinyon all year, Cooper DeJean the last 2 games have played very, very well. Can they do this the rest of the year?
I think this is who they are. Yeah, rest of the year, rest of their contracts. I mean, they are so solid, both of them, and you just don't see him messing up at all. That's really rare from one young corner.
I thought Vic Fangio gave Cooper DeJean about as high a compliment as you can give a young corner. He said he's not going to be a repeat offender.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. If you make a mistake, don't do it again. And that's what he's seen from DeJean. And I'm sure he'd say the same thing about Quignon.
And that's what, I did a story on the young defense. I talked to Reed Blankenship, who's only 25 himself, is kind of the older veteran. And he said that's the thing about both those guys. When they make a mistake, they learn from it. They don't do it again. Mm-hmm. And that's huge. I mean, that's enormous. I think they're set. And I mean, I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but if Slay is not here next year, which I think there's a good chance of, they might want to keep Cooper in the slot. He's very good at it.
And it's a starting position in the NFL.
It is. So, we'll see. I mean, Isaiah Rodgers isn't signed after this year. Mm-hmm. Keeley is obviously on a rookie contract. But they might think that their strongest group of corners is Cooper DeJean in the slot and Quignon outside with Isaiah or Keeley or, whoever. And I think they might be right.
Yeah. I have a story.
I think Cooper could play outside, but I think he's a slot.
Yeah, and if he's playing it well, there's not really a reason to move him.
As long as you have another guy to put. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you could play him outside in base package, then slide him inside on nickel. I don't think that would overload a player like him.
No, and have him return punts and
whatever else.
Sell concessions and work in the fan store. What do they call it? The Eagles.
Eagles store? What do you mean?
Eagles store, yeah.
I have a story coming out on the Rookie Corners Wednesday. It's fun. It's been fun to report on these guys a little bit, their connection, and just how much they've wanted to learn since they've been here.
And when you say connection, that's one of my core values. So it's good to hear that. And they're very close, which is really cool too.
Speaking of core values, I added this one after we talked about these items. What's your confidence level that Nick can be normal the rest of the year and that we're going to have post-game pods and Tuesday pods where we're not going, what in the heck was this guy doing?
So I'm going to tell a story about, yesterday we had Monday, we have our Zoom press conference with Nick. And so there's a PR guy who moderates the call and says what order we're going to ask the questions. And then they give you a little heads up. So before it started, they said, I had the first question. So I said, Dave, should I ask Nick if he has anything to apologize for today? Because obviously his last Monday press conference, he spent all of it apologizing. And Dave dissuaded me.
I wasn't trying to dissuade you. I said, it's funny. I wouldn't do it.
Yeah, which usually is enough to make me do it. But I did. It would have been funny. I think he would have laughed. But yes, I do think so. And maybe I'm naive here, but I think, look, he's smart enough to understand that if he acts like a clown, he's not going to be here. Like, unless they win the Super Bowl or go to the NFC Championship game or something. If he acts like a normal human being, he's not getting fired. I mean, it could be the difference between him losing his job. And that's not an overstatement. Jeff Lurie does not want a guy representing his team who's doing some of the antics that he's done. I think there's a window there where he would remain the head coach, but remain the head coach if he behaves in a professional manner, where the same result he wouldn't if he doesn't, if that makes sense. I don't know what that is. Maybe 11-6 in a first round exit. I don't know, but
tie goes to sanity.
Yeah. Tie goes to sanity. I do think he understands that. I thought his apology last week was genuine. And I mean, he was trying, he was going out of his way this week to kind of just be down the middle.
I'll tell you what, I thought he had his best game of the season. It's easy to say that when it's a blowout win, but seeing them go for it on fourth down and being aggressive in the right situations. And I thought he just had his cleanest game. There weren't even decisions to really question.
What do you think about Brian Daboll kicking that field goal?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. I think we mentioned on the post-game pod, it's like you see Brian Daboll kick that field goal, and you're going, there's no way in the world Nick Sirianni would kick that field goal.
Or any other coach.
And it's like you breathe a sigh of relief if you're the defense in that situation.
Sure.
And that should be the litmus test. You want to make the defense and you want to make the opponent uncomfortable.
Yeah.
You don't do that by kicking a field goal when you're down big already.
No, totally agree. I think Nick is really good at, and look, there was a distraction. I mean, there were reporters from out of town going around the locker room asking players about Nick. That could be a distraction if you let it. The way the week started, he had them ready to play. They played hard. They played well. They were prepared. They practiced well. I think he's good at that, and I think the results showed it.
And as much as that clip the Eagles put out reflects well on Saquon, I also think it's a really good glimpse into the interpersonal relationship building that Nick does, because like that's a real moment where he sits down with a player and like tells him, hey, if you want this, we'll do it. Yeah. I think that goes a long way. And he said that's something that Frank Reich was always big on, like know when there's a milestone or a record. Like we want to get these guys those things and we want to help them reach because a lot of players do care about that. So I think it was a good glimpse into what makes him so good and why players like him so much.
I know he was upset with himself when Devontae didn't get 1,000 yards his rookie year. Mm-hmm. He blamed himself for not he finished with like 930 or something. He blamed himself for not being aware of that.
They got him the record.
They got him the rookie record.
Which was something on their list.
Yeah. Who was that held by?
Deshaun.
It was held by Deshaun, like 890 or something.
I think he had like 912.
Okay. I'm going to see if you're right. You're probably right. It pisses me off. 912.
Yeah, right.
Jerk.
Yeah, I mean, that's great and all. But sometimes it's like, why do I know that?
Yeah.
I shouldn't know that.
I know.
I could have like useful information in my brain.
Well, like Vic was talking about the best player from East Stroudsburg, and he mentioned Mike Lush. Yeah. And I covered Mike Lush like 50 years ago. I'm like, I remember more about Mike Lush than like, CJ GJ. But anyway.
Yeah. Speaking of Vic, let's talk about him and the other coordinators on the other side.
You deserve a car that thrills you, a car that puts goosebumps on your goosebumps. At Nissan, we got everything from turbocharged SUVs to 100% electric vehicles that'll make your heart beat faster. Experience the thrill for yourself and shop your local Nissan store at nissanusa.com today.
Celebrity cook Steve Martorano brings his Italian-American cooking back home to Philly. Enjoy Martorano's Prime at Rivers Casino and Steve's famous meatballs with Sunday gravy, prime steaks, and more. Make reservations at Martorano's Prime on Open Table. So it's Tuesday as we record this. We just got back from the NovaCare Complex, talked to Vic Fangio and then Michael Clay and then Kellen Moore. Let's talk about Vic Fangio. Always a ton of answers coming from Vic. Week 8 now, and it's still as refreshing as it was in week 1. We talked about the pass rush linking up with the coverage, and I thought that was important. Give me another takeaway from Vic today that stood out to you.
It wasn't I tried to get him to talk about Sidney and what role he might have, because I think Sidney can play. I mean, we saw on special teams certainly Sunday. He's like, well, there could be a role for him, but if his role gets bigger, somebody else's has to get smaller. He wasn't quite ready to say what that would be, but they like him. They like Sidney. I think that's clear. They love his energy, his playmaking, his toughness. I mean, he just the guys were saying, he just brought energy to practice, just being back out there. Vic, he did say it's going to take him some time. Look, he missed a lot of time, and it's going to take him a while to get up to speed, just physically, just from a conditioning standpoint, till he can handle more snaps. But I did get the sense that they have a role for him down the line somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think early is going to be probably dime, and it will be Avonte Maddox off the field. Yeah, it's fair, and I like that he brought that up, because it's like it reminds me of the arguments when Pro Bowl players come out, like the Pro Bowl rosters, and you go, well, this guy should be a Pro Bowler. I was like, okay, which are those other guys you got to take off? Yeah. And that's kind of the way he viewed the Sidney stuff. So yeah, I think there will be a role for him eventually. I was listening to the Big Play Slay podcast, which has got to be tough. Slay just sits there and talks to himself for like an hour.
He doesn't have guests or anything?
No, it's just him talking.
He hasn't had Micah Parsons on?
He has. No, it's really just him. And you know how hard that is to do, just talk to yourself.
Yeah, but Slay could probably do 6 hours.
Probably. He was so complimentary of Sidney. He said he thinks he's going to be one of the best post safeties in the league at some point, just because his ability to get sideline to sideline and like do everything he can is so rare.
Interesting.
Yeah. That's all I had on Sidney. Other stuff from Vic. He talked about zone coverage and how this was a really heavy zone game. And I think that's important because earlier when there were a few like breakdowns defensively, it was passing off in these zones. And that's something that's really tough when you have a lot of young players out there. And I thought it was something they did really well on Sunday.
Yeah, it is. It's it's tricky. I mean, you got to have great field awareness and really know where the next guy is. And they seem to be pretty good at it.
Yeah. I thought Cooper DeJean and Nakobe, like those are kind of the two most important pieces of that in the middle of the field. And I thought they did it really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you don't, it's glaring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Anything from Vic?
No.
He was asked about Cooper DeJean, if it bothers him that Cooper is returning punts, and he said yes. So
when I asked Michael Clay about that, he didn't laugh.
Yeah, look, I get it from Vic's perspective, but he's such a good punt returner right now. You got to keep him out there.
I'm really curious what's going to happen when Covey's back. We don't know when that'll be. They're so different. I mean, Covey's darting around people where Cooper's just running over him. Was it Michael Clay who said he doesn't have to? You don't have to run over somebody every time.
Yeah, you can run out of bounds.
Yeah.
And he also said, like, there are situations where, and we're jumping Michael Clay, I guess, a little bit, but there are situations where you can call a fair catch. Yeah. Like, if we feel like we have a game in hand, like they did on Sunday, say, hey, Cooper, go out there, call a fair catch. We want to feel secure. We don't want to risk injury, but we also want to make sure we get the football. Yeah.
And it's hard. I mean, because you're playing, like, if you play a whole long series, I mean, I guess they're not punting if it's, but it could be, it could be 8 plays and they're punting. And, so he's on the move. He's running. It could be 6 plays, 8 plays. All of a sudden he's not leaving the field. And that's not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm. He was asked about some of the sim pressure.
Yeah.
Cause it was kind of crazy. All 8 of their sacks came from a 4-man rush. It was pretty impressive. And then you go, well, wait a second. Didn't the Kobe Dean blitz? He did, but then they dropped like Sweat or whoever else into coverage. They use those effectively in this game. And Nakobe is such a good blitzer. It's something that we saw on his Georgia tape.
Yeah.
And I've been waiting to see it in the NFL.
Yeah. People are like, why do you have a defensive lineman dropping back? But it's a sound play. And I remember Clyde Simmons dropping back in coverage and
there are going to be some funny moments where, like, in the first play of the game where all of a sudden Josh Sweat is in coverage on Malik Neighbors and you're going, what in the world is this defense? But
it's not going to be for very long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and look, these guys Josh Sweat's athletic. I mean, he can run with Malik Neighbors.
And he's long enough that, like, he can at least affect the throw.
Yeah. But if Clyde can drop back at 290, Sweaty can drop back at 253 or whatever he is.
I think that's all I had from Vic Fangio. Before we get to Michael Clay, how about Kellen Moore?
Oh, you want to do Kellen Moore next? You want to go out of order? It's unlike you.
Well, out of order in, like, the order they talk to us, but I think it makes more sense to talk about the offense.
It does make more sense, but I don't know. Your mind is so regimented. I thought you'd want to go in the same order that they spoke. Because your notes are in that order.
Well, I had to just flip the page on my notes.
We touched on. I thought it was interesting what Michael Clay said about Cooper and just being smart about. Are we talking about? Oh, you want to talk about Kellen? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Kellen doesn't say a whole ton as far as kind of revealing stuff. I asked him about Gainwell. I'm kind of fascinated by Gainwell. It's not easy to be. I thought he played well. He ran the ball well when he got in there at the end. I think last week he had like a 19-yard run at the end of the game. He's always ready, and I don't think it's an easy thing to do. You go into each week not knowing if you're going to even get on the field. I like Kenny. I think he's a talented guy. I think he's a perfect backup for Saquon. And he just talked about how, of course, he makes about all our backups, are always ready. So you're not getting a ton of insight from Kellen, but it's good to talk to him.
Yeah, he talked a little bit about the Ben Sumarin thing.
Yeah,
at fullback, lead blocker, which I sent you some clips of Ben Sumarin.
Yeah,
like, this is not like a funny ha-ha. Like, it's not a gimmick. Like, he's springing. He sprung Saquon on one of the long runs. He's playing well. it's a role that they're going to continue to use him in. I'd be shocked if this like went away.
Yeah.
That's how good he's been in it. And he said it kind of starts off as like, we'll play around with this a little bit.
I wonder if it started off, I mean, he wasn't blocking, but just when he ran that route at the end of practice that day against
Andre Sam.
Was it Andre Sam?
I think so.
No. Yeah, no, maybe it was.
I think it was.
Yeah, you're right. Damn. Dave's just right on this podcast. I mean, he wasn't blocking there, but he showed his athleticism, certainly in that he's versatile and he can, gosh, so if he keeps getting 5 to 7 reps doing that, maybe they'll throw to him.
Yeah, eventually, I mean, the probably will give him the football, either a handoff or a pass.
Yeah.
But, and I've heard this before, and this is normally what we hear when a guy is changing positions, that they saw him, because there are times where the backup linebackers will have to like present something as a running back to the starters. Like that happens quite often. And they said, like, we're watching him do that. And I'm okay. The last time I really did a story about that was Taylor Hart.
Yeah.
Remember at the end of his career, he tried to flip the offensive tackle because of what they saw.
Right.
Him helping out the other defensive tackles. But,
yeah.
But I don't think this is a permanent switch. I think it's something that he can help them with right now. Maybe it will become a permanent switch.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could. I still think he's got some potential as a linebacker. I mean, he's a physical guy and he's athletic. Obviously, Taylor Hart, an Oregon guy.
Mm-hmm.
He played for Chip at Oregon.
Yeah, and that was the guy Chip wanted to take in the 3rd round, and how he's like, we don't need to take Taylor Hart in the 3rd round. We can get him later, and they got him in the 5th.
Got him in the 5th. Yeah, that's why Chip was not a good general manager. But yeah. I mean, I haven't talked to Ben about it, but I'm sure he's just happy to get on the field and contribute.
He was fired up after the long Saquon run.
Was he?
He ran behind him the whole way, and then like really, it was an emphatic fist pump.
You didn't have a chance to talk to him post game?
I did not.
And we'll talk to him tomorrow. I'm sure one of us will. Probably you. Talk to him tomorrow.
I'd like it to be me. Yeah.
He was a good enough athlete that he told me he was recruited for baseball out of high school, like big time Division I schools were recruiting him to play baseball, which he was thinking about doing. So,
another thing from Kellen, we talked about Nick like being aggressive going for it on 4th down. Part of that is communicating it to Kellen early.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's really important because they have to work together on that. Kellen needs to know he has 4 downs here instead of 3. It changes the way you call plays. So I said they're getting like constant communication as they're going down the field. Like, hey, if we're in this situation, we're going to go for it on 4th down, because that has to change the way Kellen calls things. You can take some shots then on like a 3rd down.
Yeah.
Like, if it's 3rd and 2, you can take a shot.
Yeah.
It changes everything.
It does. And that was really interesting.
I guess you could take a shot on 4th and 3 too.
Yeah. But it changes the way you look at 3rd down, and 3rd down almost becomes 2nd down.
And it's like they were so bad on 3rd downs in this game.
Yeah.
But then you look at the 4th downs they converted, and you go, well, then maybe the objective on 3rd down wasn't necessarily to pick up the 1st down.
Right. You don't mind if you do. Nick says, I think after the game or Monday, I don't remember, one or the other, he said, if we can convert a 4th down, we consider it as a 3rd down conversion. So were they 1 for 13?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Which, like, in a vacuum is awful, and anywhere it's awful.
Yeah.
But when you look at the 4th downs they converted, it does change it a little bit.
Yeah. They were 3 for 3 on 4th down and 1 for 13 on 3rd down, which is odd.
Yeah, it is odd. And you're right. You're allowed to convert those 3rd downs and not put yourself in that position. But I think that's an important part of, we talk about identity. I think that's an important part of this team's identity, and that comes from the very tippy top.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think it's so important that Kellen knows early what the objective here is when it comes to calling plays on 3rd down.
Anything else from Kellen?
From Kellen? I don't think so. He talked about Jalen and the just how clean his games have been, and
he was asked specifically about the 2nd sack of the game where Jalen kind of turtled.
Yeah,
and he put that in the bucket of he's protecting the football.
Yeah, I mean, that's just being smart. Like, he wasn't getting out of that, so just go down and because usually the more you fight to escape, the more yards you're going to lose.
Sometimes, but with him,
with him lately, I mean,
he had some plays in that game.
He had a couple.
I guess they were more got to have it on third down.
Yeah, and with their front is so athletic and fast, and they just, there was a couple of snaps where he didn't have a chance. So I like that. I thought it was smart. You cut your losses.
You know what's funny? We didn't even ask Kellen Moore about Saquon Barkley because what else is he gonna say? Like this guy's just really good.
I was thinking about it at the end. I was like, there were more questions about Kenny Gainwell than Saquon in this presser.
But it's like, what's he gonna say about Saquon? Like, yeah, he's incredible.
Yeah,
he's the best player we have.
Yeah, we like to get Saquon involved, but we like to get everyone involved.
Yeah. Michael Clay, we mentioned the Cooper DeJean stuff. Said he thought Cooper's done a really nice job of balancing all that's on his plate, and it is a lot.
Yeah, it is, and I think that just the mental, just changing gears mentally from being a slot to being a punt return. I mean, there's two completely different roles. And he's doing it immediately. He said he does a good job compartmentalizing. Takes any extra time he has to practice. He's catching balls off the jugs. But he's such a young guy, and he's just so inexperienced. To see him handling it is really cool. Yeah.
Vic used the phrase "off the schneid" twice today.
Twice. Yeah. Once was on
Quinyon Mitchell.
Huff. Oh yeah, not getting any. Was Huff the other one on the sacks?
No, it was the team takeaways. You only get off the schneid when you're getting takeaways, apparently. I like that saying, though. Yeah.
How do you spell it? SCHNEID?
Oh, I don't know. That's one of those words I don't know if I've ever written.
Huh. Interesting. We might have to wonder. We both might have to write it.
SCHNEID.
All right, I spelled schneid right. I got one thing right on this pod. Do you italicize it because it's not a real word? Or is it a real word? That's one
originated in card games.
Really?
Where it referred to failing to score a point in gin rummy.
Really?
The term's use in sports dates back to the 1960s.
Interesting.
This is Google AI, so might be wrong, but that's the level of research I'm going to put into this.
So it's enough.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Michael Clay, nothing really else. Good to have Sidney back. He helped them. He's a great special teams player. If nothing else, he's going to make an impact on teams.
Yeah, I agree. Michael was peppered with questions about the differences in Jake Elliott and Braden Mann.
He didn't really say why, but they did use both of them.
Who cares? Like, how many questions? Like 3 questions on.
I care.
God, of course you do.
I care, but I do.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't care.
Okay. It didn't really matter.
I hate the kickoff rule. I just can't stand it. I hate watching kickoffs anymore.
I'm still trying to withhold my judgment to see Northeast football in December. I think there might be some plays because the ball just won't travel as far. But I don't know.
Maybe.
I'm losing faith a little bit.
I mean, we're sitting here in the middle of late October, and it's 85 today. So
yeah, again, we're both in heavy. I'm not good at checking the weather before I leave my house.
Yeah. Yeah, I always wear long sleeves, no matter how hot.
Well, in our building now in the Wells Fargo Center, it's cold these days. They got the ice out there a lot.
When the Flyers play, it gets so cold in here.
It's funny how that ice works. It makes it cold.
Yeah, never occurred to me. But
it is funny the first time someone goes to an ice hockey game, they go, it's cold in here. Like, well, yeah. There's a giant block of ice down there. It makes everything cold.
I came in the other day, there was a concert here. I forget what day it was. And I came in the next morning, early. I was in here early, and the ice was already down. And I'm like, how did they do that?
Well, ice is down all the time.
Yeah, but just to transform that floor from a concert. Oh, who was it? I don't remember.
Well, that's easier than going hockey to basketball.
You think? But there's so much gear for a concert. I mean, you ever see I don't know how they do it. It's incredible. I like to just sit there and watch them. I will watch the time lapse every time. Yeah, I love the time lapse, but I'll just watch them in real time. Just there could be 100 workers down there, electricians, gaffers, plumbers, roofers. I think some of those people are lost. If they're shoemakers. Yeah. They're all down there working on getting that place set up. All right, let's take some questions. Eagle-eye at NBCUni.com. If you're watching on YouTube, you can scan the QR code and ask that way. First one is from Dan.
Hey guys, love the pod. Question for you. Whenever the Eagles win on a coin flip, they always seem to defer. In many cases this year, this has led to the other team driving down the field on the opening possession and putting the Eagles in an early hole. It feels like a morale killer whenever this happens. Do you think it's time the Eagles rethink this strategy and take possession first? I understand the thinking to defer and get the ball in the second half, but maybe they're better off trying to get an early lead rather than play from behind.
I don't think it's going to change. I mean,
the analytics tell you to defer.
Yeah.
You get more possessions, and that's, that they're trying to maximize possessions. I understand the point.
And I think you can really take command if you score before halftime, then get the ball and go score.
Mm-hmm.
You can just take over a game. So it's not going to change.
Yeah, I understand the point, though, especially when you're going, and we've had these discussions before, oh man, they're starting slow. Why don't they take the football? Well, you got a quick 3 it out. You'll rethink that.
And also think confidence in your defense is a big part of that. And I think they might be starting to get some.
Next question from Mike. Long time, first time. Love staying connected to the Eagles out here in Mesa, Arizona.
Connection is one of my core values.
Through Eagle Eye. So frustrating to watch the Eagles in the first quarter. My theory, Nick Sirianni is in charge of the scripted plays. There's no sense of trying to get Hurts in rhythm. All long developing plays with an occasional run thrown in. Thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Nick obviously has his hand in that. I think that's been part of the problem with the first quarters. Now, it wasn't Sunday, but yeah, too many low percentage plays to start off a game. I would really focus on getting Jalen into a rhythm with some easy throws, and nothing wrong with getting 5 or 6 yards and move the chains a couple times and just get the whole offense feeling confident. I'm all for it.
You think this is the week they score in the first quarter?
No.
Next, at some point they're going to have to. They're not going to go a whole season.
Who says?
I do. There's no way. At some point they're going to score in the first quarter. By chance.
No. Well, maybe.
Yeah. Next question from Scott. Hey, Dave and Rube. Looked like a rough game for Fred Johnson after a full week of practice as the starter. Are you concerned, or was it more about the Giants' D-line?
Yeah, I mean, he's a backup left tackle and playing against one of the best fronts in the league. And, I mean, they're on a crazy set. They have 30 sacks. They get sacks on 15% of the pass plays. So that's, I think the last team that's been that high was like I actually looked this up, was like the 85 Bears. Yeah, I mean, I'm concerned. Fred's not a great pass blocker. He just isn't. The effort's going to be there. They just don't have any options. And I think he's good enough. 4 games is a lot to get through for him. And he's facing some really elite guys here. Obviously Sunday he will. The only option you would have is to move Becton out, but now he's got a concussion and we don't know when he'll play again. So it's a concern anytime you go from an all-pro to a journeyman backup, but they don't have a choice.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just life in the NFL as a backup tackle. There aren't many of these guys who are this good at it. So,
yeah, it makes you appreciate. I mean, like Big V came in and played really well in 2017, helped you win a Super Bowl. But, yeah, we'll see.
Next question here is from Michael. Best Eagles podcast. Thanks for doing it, fellas. Love Jake Elliott, but curious why he kicks a touchback every time and doesn't try to hit the new landing zone. You mentioned he's a good golfer. I bet he could do it. Seems like a big advantage to not let every drive start at the 30 for the opponent.
That's what they want to do.
And it's not all Jake, as we mentioned. It's mostly Braden Mann.
Yeah. I guess it's the safe route. You don't have to worry about a big return, which there have been some. Taking chances at defending 70 yards.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't given him a touchdown since the Tampa game, so it's working.
Yeah, I think occasionally you mix one in.
I think
your defense out.
Depends on the returner. Yeah.
Bob, I'm Philly born and raised, but have been living here in Giants and Patriots country for many years due to work. My question is, indeed, it was a great team win against the Giants, but if you had to choose, was it our offense or defense that had the better game, and why?
Who had a better game? I think the defense had a better game, but
I think definitely the offense got off to an
offense was
didn't play for a quarter.
1 for 13 on third down. I mean, the offense was basically Saquon.
Mm-hmm.
I really like how they defended. I mean, they held them to like 2.16 yards per play. I mean, that's insane. It was like the second lowest in the last 40 years. And I know that number because I just wrote about it. But yeah, I mean, I thought the offense was fine once they got rolling. They ran the ball great, obviously hit a couple passes, but I expect the offense to score 30 points every game. I think what we're seeing from the defense is really encouraging because there was a lot of questions about them. I mean, we knew the offense would be, when they're healthy, they're going to be a really good offense. I didn't know that about the defense. And 3 of the last 4 weeks, they've been really, really good, or last 4 games.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And the 4th, they were really bad.
Yeah, we'll take one more question. This one comes from Andrew. I've been an Eagles fan since I was a kid. I newly stumbled on your podcast. My question is, how can this defense get turnovers? We are 6 games in. We have playmakers to get turnovers, and it's not working. 3 scoring drives in the Giants games were over 70 yards. We're asking the offense to sustain long drives, and maybe that's why we are starting slow. This defense needs to force turnovers and flip the field to help the offense. I will say the defense keeps improving, and maybe it's a matter of time. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think I asked Vic about that. We didn't mention that. I asked Vic about.
No, we did, because we talked about off the side.
Yeah, but we didn't get into the substance of it. Yeah, and that's what I asked him. I said, with the personnel you have, do you feel like you should have more than 2 takeaways in 6 games, that's their fewest through 6 games since 1937.
I won't do it.
Okay. Slay just hasn't had a lot of interceptions. He's banged up. He's got the knee.
He hasn't really had that many opportunities.
No, hasn't had a ton.
Like Quignon's the guy who's had the opportunities. He has to start making these plays.
He's dropped some. They picked off a ball, but it was a free play. So he wouldn't have thrown the ball if somebody jumped off sides. But fumbles. Every time there's a fumble, the other team recovers it. I think it's 7 in a row.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I don't know. If the pass pressure keeps up the way it has the last couple of weeks, they're going to come. Reed's a ball hawk. Quignon's always in position to make those plays. I think Cooper will get his shots. Slay's got 30 of them in his career. Yeah, they should come. It's a tough way to win when you're not getting them.
Yeah, I agree. And I think they have the players. I really do. I don't think it's like they don't have players to create turnovers. Slay in his career has proven to be a guy who can create turnovers. Quignon's been in the right position. CJ has done it before.
Yeah. 5 games in a row, I think he had a.
So I think they'll eventually come.
And if you sack the quarterback 8 times, generally you're going to get 1 or 2 strip sacks.
Mm-hmm.
And
they got 1 strip sack.
Yeah, and they recovered.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they gained yards on it. So turnovers are down in general in the league. I think there's 5 teams that only have 2 or fewer. Well, you'd think you'd be like
bottom of the league,
an anomaly. They're not. I mean, turnovers are just down. I think part of the reason is all the rule changes have helped the quarterback. How many times you see an interception, there's DPI. I mean, because there's DPI in everything. But yeah, they need to pick it up, no doubt.
Thanks for those questions. If you have one for us, it's eagleeye@nbcuni.com. You have the QR code. You can scan that. I'll leave that up there for another few seconds here. A little bit of news. Thanks to Alex for dropping this in. The Eagles are releasing Paris Campbell, according to Jordan Schultz. Campbell had used up his elevations, so the Eagles signed him to their active roster. This means Anaya Smith may be ready to come back.
Maybe.
I would think they'd like to keep Paris Campbell around, put him back on the practice squad. The problem is you've used the elevations now.
Yeah, that might be up to him. But, I mean, you make good money doing it. I don't know if he's going to get a job somewhere else. Probably not. If I was him, I would be happy to do it. But, yeah, once you use the elevations, it doesn't matter what else happens, where you go, whatever. You don't have them anymore.
With that team.
Right. If he goes and signs with the Jaguars, then you have elevations. So, yeah. Good guy. Caught a touchdown, right? Did he catch a touchdown?
Yeah, that off-schedule play.
Yeah.
One of Jalen's better plays of the year.
Yeah. So, okay. Good information.
You think Anaya Smith? is
I
going
guess
to
that
take
makes
that
the most sense. Also, they put John Ross on practice squad IR, so both those veterans are not around right now.
Yeah. Okay. This is where I tell everyone, if you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please do us a favor, rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Rube, any final thoughts?
Actually, I have one final thought. Philly Music Fest started last night and continues through Saturday. And I wouldn't mention this, but it's for a great cause. The Philly Music Fest raises money for city music programs, school music programs that are underfunded. And they raise a ton of money. It's really a great cause. It's a great event. Different venues. Last night was at Ardmore Music Hall. Tonight is Waxahachie at Ardmore, and then Amos Lee Thursday, and a bunch of other bands. There's like 5 bands on the bill Thursday. Friends of mine, the Tisberries and Mondo Cosmo, playing Saturday at Underground Arts. PhillyMusicFest.com for tickets, and there's like 21 bands playing during the week, and raises money for a great cause. So definitely check that out.
Very cool. We'll be back with you guys on Thursday. For Rube, I'm Dave. This has been Eagle Eye presented by Nissan. We'll talk to you soon.